ragtime xylophone, play a lot of trad jazz on xylophone, and it's amazing. And the techniques for them to play and the way that they play and how they approach the instrument are not the things that are required for me to play necessarily. I'm not saying that those chops don't help, but there's a lot of rebound on a xylophone because it's made of wood and you play it with harder mallets, phenolic or plastic mallets. And so you have a lot of rebound like you would on a drum. So you can do a lot of that, all these kinds of sort of bouncing back and forth.
This is a podcast called Walk, Talk, Listen. An attempt to connect people and make this world a bit better by sharing opinions and experiences based on the belief that everyone's perspective is true, albeit partial. My name is Maurice Bloem, and I would like to welcome you to yet another episode of Walk, Talk, Listen.
Okay, good day, everybody. This is another episode of the podcast Walk, Talk, Listen. And as always, I'm delighted with today's guest. I'm really delighted because as my listeners know, I'm a wannabe drummer. And today we have, my ultimate, drum dream. And that's somebody that plays the vibraphone. Drew, please introduce yourself.
My name is Drew Tucker. I am the program director for Jazz Road, which is a program of South Arts. So I'm a nonprofit leader, and I also play the vibraphone and all other sorts of percussion equipment. I've been a performer since I was very young. I would say since playing the vibraphone since I was 15, played piano since I was 4, and also I have been teaching and educating right since I got out of high school. Actually, went in and started helping out at a different local high school, and then was a percussion specialist in South Florida, where I'm from, and then moved up to Atlanta in 2019. I've been rocking and rolling ever since.
Oh, wow. And I want to know all about it. But tell me first a little bit about your upbringing.
Yeah, I mean, I am the youngest of 5,
Uh-huh.
but I'm the youngest by a long shot. So I was a surprise for my parents. My brother was 14 years older than me. My sister was 14 years older than me. My brother was 15 years older than me, and my other 2 brothers were 18 and 19 years older than me. Same parents, full-blooded siblings, and then came me 14 years later in 1980. So I was raised kind of like an only child with lots of uncles always
Mhm.
around almost. They sort of felt like, but I think I had a great upbringing, so I cannot complain.
That's, I'm also the youngest with the 10 years difference with the one
I'm
above me.
nice.
So, what they say about the youngest is they're spoiled. So, were you spoiled?
Yeah.
Are you spoiled?
I guess it's a sliding term, but at the end of the day, I guess compared to my brother's upbringing in the 60s and 70s, where my parents were much younger, and there was 4 of them all together, where they sort of had to be a little bit more, I guess, uh, a little more strict with them to make sure that 4 kids stay in line. And I have kids now, and so, but they're pretty separated in terms of age. So I can definitely understand if you have 4 kids that you have to be a little bit militaristic. And so for me, I didn't have that. My parents were like, well, we were planning on these trips anyway, so we're going to go on them, like, and they also probably had more means when they had me. So I was able to, benefit from my parents' experience with the other 4. I was also able to benefit from, well, some would say benefit, um, from their older age, and the fact that they were kind of on to other things and thinking about other things, so I could kind of weave through the cracks. But fortunately, I was not a bad kid. I was a pretty good, well behaved child who did not want to. He just always wanted to do the best he could. So
Okay. And so when you grew up, um, were you surrounded already by music? Are your parents into music and your
no,
brothers, your siblings?
no, my brothers all took music lessons. My oldest brother
Uh-huh.
was a drummer. I next oldest played guitar, then saxophone and accordion, my next oldest brother, and then my sister played piano. But by the time I had come up, you see, if they were already in their teenage years, had already complained enough, my parents had already let them quit. And then they had already started to regret it by the time I started getting old enough to want to quit. So they all told my parents, um, yeah, don't let him quit because we all regret it. Like universally, all 4 of them were like, we wish we still played the instrument. So when I was crying to quit, my parents were like, nope, not going to happen. But my parents didn't play. My father, I think, was very creative. just not in a very traditional sense, where you can measure it, where he drew pictures or made songs or things like that. But he was a landscaper. His business was in landscape maintenance and the things he would even just create around the house with gardening and with all those other types of areas. You could tell that he's from both of my parents are from Jamaica. They're immigrants. They immigrated here from Jamaica. And you can tell that that sort of mentality was like, well, that's cool that I'm an artist, but that's not the thing I do to support my family. This is what we do to support my family. But I could see the expressions of that artisticness in a lot of different ways. And my mother too. My mother is a phenomenal chef. Like what some people have when it comes to perfect pitch, where they can hear a note, where they can hear songs and then just play the songs back and dissect the harmonies. That's what my mom can do with a dish. I mean, she can go out and eat something and be like, "Oh, there's too much of this. This is what," and she can go home and recreate it right away just from tasting it. So I guess yes, there's more. I guess you'd say unconventional artistic talent that kind of runs throughout my family, but not in the musical sort. Not at least not overtly.
Okay. Wow. And so how did you get into it? What was the first instrument you played?
Piano,
Okay.
piano. That was the lessons I took.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I remember every one of my piano teachers, some better than others. And then when I got to middle school, there was no piano option. So I actually went to go play saxophone, and they said they were already too full on saxophone. So they said, well, you play piano, so now you can play the bells in symphonic band. You can play drums because you can clap rhythms. So cool. I played drums. And then when I got to high school, I went to play drum set in the jazz band, and there was already this cool senior playing drum set in the jazz band. He was good. So I played all the extra auxiliary parts, one of which included vibraphone. That was maybe my first go round, and then I marched drum and bugle corps, which I also auditioned to march on the tenors, the multi tenors, or quints or quads, whatever people like to call them. And I did not make it, and then got put in the pit, which is the front ensemble, which is made up of vibraphones, marimbas, bells, other sort of non-moving percussion, stationary percussion. And I had a teacher who was in the parking lot one day on tour and playing some vibes and playing some jazz, and I was like, "What is that, man?" He was playing Footprints, and I went and he's like, "Oh, I'm just trying to arrange this song." I said, "Well, where's the music?" He's like, "I'm just doing the changes, man. This is jazz." And I was like, "Whoa, that's the coolest stuff I've ever heard." Up to that point, I'd only heard like very Western classical and like scales, just played major scales, minor scales. And this guy was playing extensions and different, different variations and chord inversions, and I was just blown away by the sound and the harmonies, and that was it. And then found a teacher in Florida, and he let me hear uh, Gary Burton and Chick Corea live in Zurich, 1979, and that album pretty much
Mm.
locked it in for me. It was like bells and wind chimes and angels descended from heaven when I heard that, and that was it. And I was locked in on this silly instrument.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Oh, that's a great
Oh,
story. How old
sorry.
were
And
you?
then one other
Yeah.
thing is the movie Glitter came out in 2001, where this guy plays marimba and then ends up getting to make out with Mariah Carey, and that was also pretty like, all right, well, if marimba is going to get Mariah Carey level of partners, and that's, I guess, I'm going to play marimba and vibraphone some more. Although I will say that I think that was a little bit false advertising, but I did get a beautiful wife, so maybe not.
and and how old were you when that happened? Exactly.
Oh, that movie was 21. I was 21.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But the footprints.
Oh, that was 15, 14, 15, 15.
Okay. Gotcha.
15. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, and that was it.
Um.
And then I just started. I went and met a piano player who is now in Vegas, plays all the time. He's a wonderful, really notable piano player out there. And then we just played duets. And then from 15 years old, I would walk up and down every single venue or strip mall or gym, barbershop, ice cream store. Didn't matter. I just went and said, "Hey, you guys want jazz music? I'll play for free. If you like it, then you can pay me $100." And I just went to every single place, and just I didn't care what it was. I didn't care if it was a law firm. I didn't care. I did not care. Um, and believe it or not, more places than you think would be like, sure, we'll have you come play. And
Yeah.
so
So you had your vibraphone already at that time.
I was creatively borrowing it from school.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Because it's not a cheap instrument, right? So if you
No, it's
compare
not
it to
cheap.
some other, yeah,
My first one was bought from a doctor who wanted to pick it up and then never really picked it up and then just sold it. My dad, we went over there and he bought that one. That was my first one that we bought. It's not a very practical instrument for parental purchase. It's not a practical instrument for a lot of reasons. It's huge. It's expensive. There's not even a place that you can put picture frames on it. So a parent can put it in the living room. It just utilitarian, like it takes up room for that one specific purpose, as opposed to a piano, which is kind of a statement piece. It's a piece of furniture. The vibraphone and marimba do not necessarily have that um, same quality and appeal to the non-musician.
No, but my drums are always really present as well, right? So you have the same problem there, and when you go around and play somewhere, it's a hassle to take. So, did you after high school, did you go to a music school, university, or you were you always stick to teachers, and that was your route? What happened?
Um, so I went to a lot of college. I did not graduate from most of them. Um, and I went to Florida Atlantic University. And at the time, they didn't have a strong percussion program outside of just a basic, maybe drum set teacher. And so when I came in as a vibraphone player, I don't think that they had really set up structure for that. So what they would do is they put me with a drum set teacher, and they put me with a piano teacher, and they put me with a classical percussion teacher, and thought that you put all of those things together, that I would then become a jazz vibraphone player. And I did get a lot of good information. It was an experience, but they really kind of um, didn't have the infrastructure to elevate my playing as I felt at that time. Because I didn't have a vibraphone teacher, it was like, all right, well, play in this ensemble, because I was pretty versatile, and it wasn't a big studio. It's a much better situation now. They have good educators over there, but at the time, it was kind of leaving me a little bit wanting based on where I wanted to go. And so then I applied for Berkeley School of Music in Boston, and I got in, and I was up there for a little bit. But I also had already been working. Like I mentioned to you, I had been working since I was 15. So at this point now, I'm 18. I've been 3 years gigging all the time. I knew what gigs were paying. I knew what gigs were paying in Miami. I knew what gigs were paying in Florida. I talked to people, built up a network. I knew what gigs were pretty much paying everywhere. And the fact is that when I looked at Berkeley at the time, was going to cost me 60 grand a year. I think with house, maybe somewhere between 30 and 60 grand a year. Either way, bottom line was I wasn't making enough to pay that off playing gigs. And if I just wanted to play, it didn't make any sense to me to go to school and get that level of debt, where I just already knew that whatever they were gassing you up about this life and career as a musician, did not resonate with me, because it wasn't my experience at the time. So um, I left there, and then came back home to South Florida, and uh, it was a little bit depressing, honestly. So I just ended up kind of doing my other love, which is art. So I went to school for graphic design and advertising from the Art Institute of Fort Lauderdale. Got a certificate from there, and then was miserable because I wasn't playing music. So then I went back to playing and teaching music. So, but all that time I was already, for the most part, with the exception of a lot of my time at Art Institute, I was playing 6 nights a week. I was playing all the time. So, uh, but then when I went to the Art Institute, the workload made me have to focus, because it was all visual art. And then, and that led to me saying, you know what, no, I want to do something. I want to go back and go and do music. So I sold a couple things and opened a music school in South Florida, and just kept gigging, playing, and being a percussion specialist. And that was my 20s.
Wow. No, so
Yeah.
you really have this how do you call that, entrepreneurial spirit, and I think that's fortunately or unfortunately very much necessary as musician. Unless you are somebody that has the top hits, right? It's a hard work and
Yeah, but even then,
hustling, and
if you don't
yeah,
have enough, if you don't have that entrepreneurial spirit, and you're expecting other people to take care of you and pay your checks, those are
yeah,
usually the ones that end up losing money.
yeah. No, you're right. I would like to talk a bit about the vibraphone, because I'm intrigued by that instrument. If and also, um, then when I look at your work, even you're very explicit about it's not a xylophone,
Mm-hmm.
right? So,
Yeah.
and then I think of the long history of mallet instruments, from George Hamilton, Green's ragtime xylophone, to Lionel Hampton's vibraphone.
Sure.
So, do you feel like you are reclaiming or reinterpreting part of the lineage, or deliberately breaking from it? What makes the vibraphone for you the instrument to express who you are?
It's a great question. I first of all, I'd like to say I have nothing against the xylophone. It's just not the instrument that I play most
Okay.
often.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
can play it. I respect people who play it very well, but I don't. I don't play it very frequently unless I'm asked to play for behind back of an orchestra. I do have colleagues who play ragtime xylophone, play a lot of trad jazz on xylophone, and it's amazing. And the techniques for them to play and the way that they play and how they approach the instrument are not the things that are required for me to play necessarily. I'm not saying that those chops don't help, but there's a lot of rebound on a xylophone because it's made of wood and you play it with harder mallets, phenolic or plastic mallets. And so you have a lot of rebound like you would on a drum. So you can do a lot of that, all these kinds of sort of bouncing back and forth. Whereas with a vibraphone, they're made of the mallets are yarn or cord or some sort of layers of both or some sort of poly material, and the bars are made of metal and it's kind of soft, and we have a pedal which sustains them, so we don't have necessarily that level of rebound, so we can't play. We can, but it's more challenging for us to play some of that really fast double stroke stuff that you'd hear in your George Hamilton Green adaptions or some of your more ragtime xylophone or your trad jazz stuff. The vibraphone was essentially supposed to be kind of a vaudeville instrument, and it was taken out of vaudeville really by Lionel Hampton, and then really taken seriously once Milt Jackson got a hold of it, and then it kind of expanded, and you had your Cal Jader, that was really taking you adding those island grooves from Hawaii and some of that South Pacific energy to it, and then also you have like Roy Ayers who really brought a lot of soul to it. He probably I would say my closest inspiration, probably my favorite. I would say reflects the style that I play, or that I reflect the style that he played probably closest. Then you get into Bobby Hutcherson, Gary Burton, and now you have you guys out there now: Warren Wolf, Joe Locke, Stefan Harris. These guys in New York, who are also killing it. Joel Ross, cats like that. So, um, it's gone its own way to be specifically a jazz instrument, but it's still used in contemporary classical. But to answer your question more specifically, the difference is that the metal keys, it has a dampening pedal, and it also has it has a pedal which connects to a dampener, which when released, the keys will resonate and give you sort of that open feel like you would with a piano sustain pedal. Um, but while that allows for a lot of amazing expressive qualities, and I think you can't get on other mallet percussion instruments, it also makes it more challenging because you really need to control all of those overtones because everything is relatively high pitched, right? So it only goes like a couple notes below middle C, so you don't have really that breadth and range, so everything can get really cacophonous really quick if you're not careful. um so one of the reasons I love playing marimba as well, because it gives me that nice low warmth, so every now and then to switch that color, I do love playing marimba. I have I have no problem playing the xylophone. It's just I don't not a lot of stuff that I specifically do calls for it.
Okay. No,
Oh, but sorry,
yeah,
and
yeah.
just to bring it all the way back around to the beginning, it's not a xylophone thing. My shirts that say it and all those kinds of things. That was born out of frustration at a gig when a bunch of people just kept saying, "I love the xylophone," while trying to place their drinks on my vibraphone way back when I was playing bars a lot. And I went home and just changed all my screen names and changed all my stuff, and I was just so frustrated. I'm like, it's not a xylophone. So sick of saying it to the point now where a lot of my friends will wear the shirt or they'll joke with me like, "Hey, how's that xylophone?" Trying to be smart. But the fact is that since they're aware of it, I'm actually doing my job. And the reason why is more than just a kitschy thing. I mean, how many people are going to hire the next generation of musicians if they don't know the name of the instrument, right? So the next generation of vibraphone players, they may love the sound of that instrument. They may have heard it, but when they go and Google and say, "Let me see what xylophone, let me show my husband before our wedding I want this xylophone player." And then it comes up and you see like a bunch of people playing on the ribs of skeletons and old Betty Boop cartoons. And you see, and you hear the Jetsons, the Flintstones theme song. You'd be like, "Why would I want that in my wedding?" And they're like, "No, it sounded differently." So I think it's important.
Um,
It's a baseline importance that people understand what this instrument is, or at least what the name is, for the future generation to have an easier time than I did.
yeah, yeah. And if people are not familiar with the instrument, I really would advise them to check it out. And the way you play it is awesome. And just for the listeners, I mean, the first time I saw you was I've seen you twice now live. Was both with Andromeda, um, which were two incredible concerts. Different. The first one was in a church. The second one was at the university. It's
Mm,
part of a bigger, you know, a deeper dive into the latest album of Andromeda. Where yeah, it was great to experience. Um, yeah, I want to. Okay, before I forget, what
Sure.
because you have a lot of merchandise as well that people can still buy, right? Your T-shirts about from It's Not a Xylophone and stuff. Where do people need to go to check that out? And
You can just go check out it's not a xylophone.com. I'll link it from there. But it's box5apparel.com is where sells my who sells my
okay,
stuff.
we'll make sure that we put
Yeah,
it in
yeah.
the podcast notes. But as you mentioned, you can also go from your own website. It's not a xylophone.
Sure.
Is it .com or
Yeah,
.com,
.com.
right? Yeah, and then they can find it out. Um, yeah, let me you know this this podcast is actually a spin-off of a 100-mile walk that I started to do in 2012. I'm still doing that, in 5 to 7 days. This year it will be 5 days. I'm trying to walk 100 mile and to raise awareness about hunger, poverty, injustice. Um, and during that walk, I used to be accompanied by some folks. They would walk a mile with me, sometimes 15, sometimes 20. But we talk about life because after mile 10, your knee starts to hurt. You think to you by yourself, why am I doing this? What is the purpose of life?
Sure.
And anyway, during COVID, I was not able to walk with others, so that's why this podcast was born. But I'm curious also, like if you would be asked to walk 100 mile in a week, for which cause would you do it, and why?
Man, that's a great question. I think that I would do something for music education for all. I think that music education is more vital than we give it credit for because it doesn't have immediate consequences or immediate benefits necessarily, right? So it's you don't go practice once and all of a sudden, you're great and you're ready for a concert. You don't conversely, you don't miss practicing for a day or two and immediately feel the effects. So but I think that for children it's so vital to creating a empathetic and solid, well-rounded human that I think that it's a crime that is not considered as essential as English or math or whatever the other, especially as essential as your some of your other subjects. So I think that would be important. I think I would always walk for anything that has to do with helping all victims of domestic violence, both male and female. I think that I would walk for actually I would definitely walk for victims of male domestic violence. And that is something that is close to my heart, and then so I think that it is important, and we don't talk about it enough, and that and not to take anything away from anybody else who experiences it, but there's all sorts of wonderful places and people and resources for lots of victims of domestic violence. But I think that when it comes to men, it's kind of really highly stigmatized, and there's not a lot of spaces for those people to be able to speak, which also kind of dovetail into men's mental health, which I think is also really important. But of course, uh, anything having to do with helping humans
Mm.
to be able to reach a level of have a level of dignity either in their struggle um or in their health challenges, and just be able to kind of eradicate as much disease as possible for whatever it is that is underdeveloped. But honestly, um and having children of all different generations, I think I think investing in education is the most important thing that we can do, because I believe if you don't invest in education, you invest in jails, and that seems to be our business model here. This is better to invest in jails and education, and I think that's backwards. So, but that's not to say that if there was a 100-mile walk for testicular cancer, and I had been affected by that, or someone I knew had, I wouldn't do that. And I do have family that's affected by breast cancer, which um, that also so a lot of times these things are made because they affect us and they touch our life, and you don't want to see other people go through what you went through, or you want to help the people who are currently going through it in your life. And I think that those are probably the areas that um, I could I could see myself that would resonate with me the deepest.
Oh, okay. Can I ask you then about the education because you started I mean, you were alluding to that earlier, right? You're teaching. So you're not only making music, you do different things. Can you tell a bit about it?
Yeah. I was a percussion specialist, so I would go into schools. A lot of band directors don't have they have staff, and they don't have a lot of experience in playing percussion instruments. They came up in brass or winds or piano or even vocal for that matter. And so they hire someone like me to come in and teach the percussion section, which is usually pretty large, usually, especially in high school. Yeah, you're anywhere from 10 on average to 40, 50 kids. And a lot of times, it's a lot of students for you not to really understand how to teach very well, other than maybe just general. So they bring in specialists like myself. So I did that in Florida. I did it at most schools. I did so many schools over the course of my career. And then up here in Georgia, I was the percussion director at Cal. And I still go and speak at a lot of universities when it comes to music business for music majors or just percussion specialty techniques and vibraphone, how to play improvisation, things like that.
So, during those walks, I often talk then when, think about life and why we end up talking about religion and spirituality.
Yeah.
And and especially I don't know why, what's happening with the younger generation, because it seems that they well, if you look at church, for example, I mean, that's and especially in Western countries, that's going down. So it doesn't, it doesn't attract the younger generation. It seems. Um, so have been teaching. You're teaching. What do you see happening when you're mentoring these young musicians across the country, right? Because you're going around here, but also doing that. We did not talk about it. So, what values or spiritual impulses do you see surfacing among them today?
Or lack thereof.
Oh, yeah.
Um, Interesting because music is essentially a very spiritual
Mm.
practice. It can be, right? But it takes a lot of patience and it takes a lot of sacrifice. And sacrifice is something that is uniquely, by and large, a human practice, right? Not to say that there's no sacrifice present in the animal kingdom, but usually that sacrifice isn't acknowledged as a sacrifice. It's I'm going to defend my family from this threat, and yeah, my goal is not to get sacrificed. My goal is to win this fight so my family can get away. Right? If you're an animal, you're a zebra or antelope, and all right, let me get in the way so my family can get away. And but your idea isn't like I will sacrifice myself. Your idea is I this is the biological imperative for me to protect my family, and I likely would join them up soon. Um, I think religion teaches you what sacrifice really means. And it gives you an understanding of the idea of putting off something that would be pleasurable to you now for greater benefits. Even some might be unknown benefits, right? In the future. I mean, that is essentially, I was raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses and I was, with Judeo Christian values. So at the end of the day, I mean, that is ultimately the entire scheme of things is like sacrifice your uh, something you may want now for a promise of something that might happen in the future or that you're going to increase the odds of happening in the future. And without that base, I think that there are a lot of challenges that arise because you have a generation of people being overgeneral, obviously, um, who kind of don't understand that as well or they've heard about it, they understand it in concept, but they haven't practiced it since they were young. They haven't used that kind of language because it's not present. Um, and so it's hard to get people to get young people, I've noticed in my experience, to understand that, listen, this is not going to pay off now. This is going to actually be pretty hard now. You practicing, you're going to be like Sisyphus pushing the boulder up the hill. I think it's Sisyphus at least. Anyway, pushing that boulder up the hill and feels like it's going forever. And you have to get to a certain point where you hit that critical mass and moving the boulder down the hill becomes easy. And now practicing becomes something you can't live without. But you have to get through this sort of gap period and you have to sacrifice your time, your energy, your money things that you might as well go play, be at the movies, hanging out with friends, being at the beach, taking vacations, but this is going to pay off later on. And there's not a lot of disciplines that teach you that other than spirituality, music, and really working out. Really, three very important things. Working out being the same way. Like you can't cram for a marathon. You can't decide tomorrow unless have a certain genetic attributes that you can just wake up tomorrow. So, I'm going to run a full marathon, an Ironman tomorrow. So today I'm going to train by running all those miles, and then tomorrow I'll just be able to do it. Doesn't work that way. If you haven't built up that stamina over time, which is why you also find a generation, I think, or we've also found ourselves pretty obese as a people as well. So everything is everything. So I think that idea of sacrifice, of putting aside your current needs for the sake of what's later, is being lost as that third space of church kind of goes away. That's not to say that those things are inherently good, that there's not things that need to be improved about the structure. And obviously religious organizations are notoriously slow to adjust um, to certain things. But overall, the idea of is not about you, right? It's about serving others. That is the meat of life, is serving other people, and is sacrificing your immediate pleasures for greater joys down the future, is something that I fear is being, if not lost, drastically dropping in priorities for a lot of students, a lot of kids, a lot of parents who are parenting their kids in this generation.
So if I'm listening to you, has maybe your role as a teacher shifted then, of only teaching technique and stuff into kind of mentorship of life?
I never only taught technique.
Okay.
I never only taught. It's never been fun for me to just go in and just be like, all right, here's how your finger should be. Here's your fulcrum here. Some people get off on that stuff all the time. I'm very clear when people hire me, especially as a private coach for their kid. I still have a couple private students. That what you're going to get is a lot of talking. We're gonna work your headspace as much as we're going to work your hands. And I believe that if we can get you to be at a certain maturity level and understanding of what this music means, why you're playing it, and how this relates to your overall life and to the life of the people around you, that you're going to ultimately stick with it longer, love it more, and you're going to be more successful as a result. What that does mean, though, is that in the beginning, it might not seem like you're making the progress that some of your friends are, because they're just going to give them charts and they're going to be like, here, play. So look how cool my student plays. Look how great this student plays. Look, I just showed him how to play this piece, or I showed him how to play this, whatever. For me, it's like, okay, what did you do wrong? All right, great. Well, why? Do you know what happened there? No, play it again. Open your ears. You gotta listen. All right. So what do we have to do to make it better? And then I find the gaps where because sometimes I might teach something that I think is the problem, and they're like, yeah, I knew that, but it's not helping, because I'm just saying what I think I see as a problem, or what has been in my experience the problem that I've approached with other students. Giving them the opportunity to tell me, they could be like, yeah, my pinky just hurts. I can't get it to this particular note or whatever. I was like, oh, I didn't even know that. Oh, I didn't even realize your pinky is actually kind of short. You know what I mean? Like, interesting. All right, well, here's another technique that we can do, or whatever the situation might be. But um, even when I taught ensembles, and most of the groups that I've taught over the years have been competitive ensembles, so they've been competing in marching, things like that. Um, it is basically our team sport. Like marching band is like our team sport, right? So a lot of it is going toward like, all right, well, you not being here today means that your friends all suffered, because I can't properly teach them without the context of you here. So when you miss, everybody suffers. Oh, my actions affect the whole in a large way, right? And it's very apparent, because like, come listen when you don't play. Come see what happens to the rest of the ensemble when you're not playing. And they're like, whoa, I didn't realize I was this important. Yeah, you're this important in your life too. You know what I mean? Like, see what happens when you're not around and your parents have to react, right? It's kind of like It's a Wonderful Life, but for in music edition, sort of, right? So,
Okay. Um, and Drew, we haven't talked about this, but you're someone with multiple roles, right? You're not only the musicians, the artist, you're an educator, and tell me if I'm wrong, a grant maker, an administrator.
mhm.
Um, what keeps you up at night?
um, nothing really. Um, the only thing that keep me up at night is if I'm not acting congruently with my values, which has happened, right? That keeps me up at night. Um, Conversations that I'm scared to have keep me up at night, I guess, really. Scared to have with somebody else or scared to have with myself. I think that's the source of all anxiety is a conversation that you're not willing to have or you're scared to have.
Can you name an example of that?
Uh, sure. Maybe my maybe something I need to share with my wife is something that I think that she might be doing unintentionally that's hurting my feelings or that is making me feel a certain way. Something I'm sure she has no idea about, and but it's kind of nervous to talk to her about it because I'm worried about what the feedback might be and that it might turn into a fight or I don't want the static and things are going really good. That kind of thing will keep me up. The conversation with myself about like, okay, why do I keep repeating these? Why is the same negative feedback keep happening at work or whatever? And it's like, okay, I can keep blaming other people, or I could actually take a look at myself and realize that, okay, I need to sit down with myself and realize and change this habit or this behavior or whatever it is that I'm not realizing is causing trouble. But instead of having that conversation, I'm just blaming everybody else, or I'm going out or distracting myself with other work or doing other things. And then that kind of stuff is like, why do I have this anxiety? Well, really, it's probably a conversation I'm just not having with myself that needs to be had, honestly. Um, I would say those types of things,
Mm.
or with my child, or when I'm seeing a bad behavior pattern. It's like, do I want to go through the issue of telling this very good child that this thing is going to cause trouble, or do I want to push it under the rug and hope it goes away? That kind of stuff will keep me up at night. Why did I not have that conversation with my daughter? Why did I not do those things? But as far as world events that I have no control over, I just, the practice is being in the moment. And in the moment, I have clean water that I can drink. I have a roof over my head. My children are healthy, and my wife is healthy, and I'm healthy. So in that moment, I have no problems. If I those things are there, I have zero problems that are worth anything to me. Because they're all luxury problems, right? So I have healthcare. I can go to the doctor if I have, I'm getting over a cold. I could have medicine. But again, I have clean water, and it can be hot or cold at any time, and I could drink it right from the faucet and not worry about dying tomorrow. So the practice of reminding myself of those things really does help me sleep. But if I lose my temper at somebody or I get mad or I'm acting in a way that or I do something in a way that I think might have brought some sort of pain to somebody else that didn't deserve it, that'll keep me up for a long time until
And
I
and
until I make it right.
how do you get out of that particular situation then?
You have the conversations you're scared of having
Mm.
without any expectations of the result. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I failed. Well, I don't care. I don't ever want to be your friend again. I understand that. That has not happened, fortunately. I have a good track record. But should that happen, it doesn't matter. Should the worst happen and this person just cusses me out, I have to be ready for that and take it and close the loop and then keep trying to act in a way that's not like that. And hopefully that person comes back into my circle again if that relationship is worth saving, etc. Um, but relationships are the thing that make life beautiful, and so I cherish them and value them. And I think that I was joking with a friend of mine. I'm like, I'm friends with every ex I ever had. Like, we're still on speaking terms. That's like a point of pride for me, that I've never had a situation where I've been hated by someone who has been intimately close to my circle. And I think that that's not to say everyone loves me by any stretch. I'm a lot, but, and that's fine. That's fine if people don't like me for being me. I'm not worried about that. It's if I've done something that's incongruent with my values that may have caused this damage, which fortunately I can say is not a lot in my adulthood.
Right. Let us piggyback for a second on,
Sure.
you mentioned relationship. That starts with connection first. And what I hope that this podcast is contributing to is, connecting people, um, realizing that there are other perspectives out there, and then you might not agree, but it's interesting to listen to, and maybe it could
Mhm.
even start a dialogue. I've tried to weave that into the questions as well, because I'm going to connect you with the previous guest. And the previous guest has a question for you.
Sure.
And the question is,
What is the what is the one thing um, that you would like to say to your younger self? Um, the one piece of advice that you would have liked to hear from somebody when you were a young adult? Um,
It's hard to say, like, I would have heard it from I mean, listen, the Bible, the Quran, the Torah, which is part of the Bible, I guess, your self-help books, all of these things are just, in a lot of ways, on your certain levels, it's a repackaged advice in a way that's going to make you listen. Some people want to hear information from their sister. Some people want to hear from a mentor. Some people want to hear from a parent. Some people want to hear from a book. Some people want to hear it on their TV shows. That's why it keeps on coming out, and self-help is still like the most important thing. But I don't know that I would have listened to. I'm going to say this, and I listened a lot. I liked to listen to people. I guess growing up with older brothers, like, you just sort of, like, these older people know better and they are doing better, so try to do those things. Um, but I guess I'll play the game though. So if I were to go back and give, I would say, don't try to keep up with anybody. That may sound kind of overused, but that you're going to go on your own journey and it's going to be your journey. I think I understood that pretty well, and I think had I seen my future self pop up and be like, don't try to be like my brothers came up in the 90s. Like, they were already in there. Like, so in the 90s, I was 10 through 20. They were in their 20s and 30s. So they were in like a really nice, solid spot to be getting their career off if they chose the right thing. Um, so by the time they were sort of like competent enough to be making good money, there was opportunity there that is not there for me now. And as a musician, it's not going to be there for me in a traditional sense. And I think I made a lot of moves in order to satisfy what I thought either my friends thought, my parents expected of me, or my brothers thought of me. And I faked a lot about, like, I faked having more money than I had when I was younger because I thought that was my brothers were all doing all this and doing so well. And I was 21, 22. I didn't have any money. But if I did, I was going to fake it. And I would have liked to have not done that. And of course, I would have told myself to do better with money when I was in my 20s. I didn't really get that education. As musicians, we don't have the greatest, historically don't have the greatest reputation with finances. And honestly, I would love to see more universities take that way more seriously, because any music education career should be an entrepreneurial base with music, right? So if you're gonna, it's like being in commercial real estate. Go commercial real estate degree. It's entrepreneurship, and also hear some about real estate, to make sure you know what's going on. And it should really be the same way when it comes to music. It should be, here's what it means to be an entrepreneur. Here's how you set up your LLC. Here's how do you book gigs? How do you show up? How do you do videography? Like, the modern education for the artists is not not preparing them for the world in which we are currently. And it hasn't for a long time, frankly. So I think those things, don't compare. However, I can tell you that I can remember things that people have told me in my 20s that, even if I didn't understand how to apply it, like, I remember after my father passed away when I was 21, my brother sat me down at a Denny's and was like, your life is going to be a product of the little choices you make from day to day. And I can remember what I was eating. I was eating a Grand Slam. I remember what he was doing. He was eating a little bit of grits and some oatmeal and coffee, I think. Maybe not. Took very good care of himself. He did not eat the junk. Still doesn't. And I remember hearing that. I didn't get it, but man, it just stuck with me. And when things were going bad, I was like, oh, it's how I wake up in the morning, is how I make my bed, is how I do all of these things, is how my life is going to turn out. This is my life. My life isn't the big concerts and the big moments, and I got this huge opportunity to play with this artist or to record with this person. That's not my life. Those are just cool highlights. My life is how good this tea is tasting to me right now, and how appropriate it is, and how glad I am I made it before this podcast and didn't sit here without tea. Like, I'm really grateful right now. Like, that's what makes up my life, you know. Um, so I think I've always been pretty keen to listen. Um, but even if it takes me some time.
And well, I can attest to that because when you play music, I hear that you hear the others in the band very clearly. So, um, yeah, your question for the next guest, Joe.
My question for the next guest. Let's come back to that.
You want to do it later? That's good.
Let's come
As
back
long
to
as we don't forget it, because um
I'll do my best. I can't promise, but I will do my best.
um yeah, you know, this is a question that I always ask to the musicians. If you have to, yeah, you have to choose between a trio, a quartet, or a quintet. What do you choose
To listen to or to play in?
to play in?
Uh, so playing the instrument that I play, I can play chords, so I can kind of be a piano player or a guitar player. I can play melodies, so I can be more of the lead player, like a saxophone or a horn or vocalist. Um, I'll couch it in experience. We went on tour, and what I tried to do on this tour, it was one of our early tours, was to take people who were essential. So my bass player, who's my music director, and my saxophone player, who I just love his sound more. I can't like his sound is so beautiful, and I also love these two people. So we went on the road, and what we were going to do is hire a drummer and a piano player in uh, in the cities that we went in. So this worked in Nashville, and we were on the way. Actually, New Orleans was first, so we went to New Orleans, and the piano player at the last minute canceled. Like the night we were pulling in, I messaged him and said, "Hey, haven't heard from you. Have you got a chance to look over the music?" And so I'm pretty organized. Like I sent a Dropbox file with reference tracks, with clicks, with all the things that one would need, sheet music, everything that one would need, notes to be successful and meet me on a show, if they worked. I think what ended up happening was perhaps this artist thought that the stuff was going to be easy, looked at it the night before and was like, "Oh, this is not, in fact, as easy as I thought." And he's like, all of a sudden, he's getting sick. So I'm like begging him because I've never played that other than in a quartet at the time. I'm like, "Please, please, 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 please." And he's like, "Nope." I tried to replace him. Jazz Educator Network was in town. I was trying to find other piano players. No one's really available. And my bass player, Bill Muter, he's actually a tuba player. He plays tuba. Um, was like, "I think we're going to have a harder time getting somebody caught up to speed than just playing without a piano player." And so we went on and played without a piano player. And what I realized was how much time I would play and then be just sitting out and not playing because you had the piano player, you had the sax player, sax take a solo, piano take a solo, drums take a solo, then I'd come back in and play at the time. And without the piano player, I ended up having to play the chords behind the sax player, play the chords on the hits. So I was playing the whole show, and I was like, wow, this felt like my show. Like for one of the first times, I wasn't just standing around. So I had a lot of fun. There was a lot of work, but I really did enjoy handling that harmony part, plus a little bit of the melody, and being able to play the whole time and contribute more to my music than I was doing before. So that was a quartet. It would have been a quintet otherwise, actually. And then bass, drums, piano, sax, and me. So it was five I was doing with. This was four. And then we went on tour in Kosovo, and due to budget, we were like, let's just do it as a trio. But I had to pick certain musicians. So like the drummer that I picked was much more melodic and less just in the pocket. So he'd play a lot more around the drums to fill up that space. Bill Muter played tuba and I played vibes, and and that was just a lot of fun because it was so improvisational. And every song we would just, only three of us had to communicate. So we would just see where we would go and take it where it went, because you're not trying to communicate with five, six people trying to make sure everyone's on the same page. Um, and we just had a blast. However, I do think that, after an hour of music, I kind of wish I had one more sound that sort of broke it up. So I would say probably quartet would be my sweet spot, and it would be me. But really, at the end of the day, almost every group that I've ever formed was because I loved the people in it,
Uh,
and so I would form groups around the people. Obviously, I had to play, but I'd rather take a player who's not the bestest and I love playing with them, that I know is going to be looking out for me and I'm going to look out for them, that I would play with somebody who's so great that he knows the song so perfect. And if you don't play it that perfect, then you're going to look
o-
incorrect.
okay, then
Right.
I'm
And that's just me. I can't say that
yeah,
for
yeah.
everybody. For other people, it's different.
No, so I'm interested that in your answer to my follow-up question. So if we are looking at, let's take the quartet. If I tell you to make your favorite quartet, um, with any musician, dead or alive, who you would put you into your quartet?
I don't think I've ever thought about, oh, yeah, I think we thought, I'm trying to think of the questions we ask ourselves when we're in a bus on a 10-hour trip. Um, we usually say, what's your dream gig? But I like this question. So what is the quartet? All right. Probably doesn't have me in it. I'm probably just watching for it. Um, which my player would I rather hear? Um, I would say it's assuming that all these wow. Okay, it's Chick Corea on piano. It's God, or is it Michelle Camilo on piano? I don't know. It's one of those two. Maybe we have two keyboard players. I don't know, they're just going off. That'd be pretty fun. Then I would say I'm gonna go with Chick Corea. Chick Corea on piano. It's me. It's probably either Steve Swallow or um, John Patitucci on bass. I would still have Bill on tuba, even with all the musicians on the planet. That guy's he's gonna be my right hand up until in every lifetime. Um, and then I would probably have wow. You'd probably have who would play drums? That's the thing. Okay, I'm gonna go back. Okay, it'd be Chick Corea, it would be Bill, it would be John Patitucci on bass, on drums, it would be Chris Dave and and Terry on Gully, otherwise known as Tank, and then I would have some out there. I would have Raj, I would have Zakir Hussain on tabla.
Now you're cheating, right? Now you're
Oh,
going
am I?
beyond your.
Am I? I mean, um, and I would do one more drum set player, and I'd probably have Nate Smith
Okay.
on drums.
Okay.
No, I'd have Pitar, who drums with Corey Wong right now. I mean, but if I'm going like legendary worldwide, Tony Williams probably, and then I would have Giovanni Hidalgo on percussion, and I would have Sarah Reich tap dancing.
I love
Yeah,
this. I love this question.
love
Always
it.
asking two musicians.
That's a
Okay.
great question. That's a
Um,
great question. I might email you with an update after I give it some more thought. I'd not thought about that.
yeah, and if you have your band together, I will come and watch it. Although it might be challenging, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's a
um,
great question. It's a great
with
question.
those musicians who passed. Um,
Mhm.
okay, let us stay with the music, and this is normally the most difficult question for my guests, and that is if I ask you to come up with a song or a piece of music that best embodies who you are for a big part, which piece of music or song would it be and why?
Lucky by Tish Hyman.
Okay, and why?
That was the easiest one. I mean, you have to listen to it's a beautiful song. It's very simple, but the whole thing she's just talking about, I got shoes on my feet. I'm so lucky. I got air in my lungs. I'm so lucky. I can do what I love. I'm so lucky. And I just feel that way all the time, honestly. Like, I feel that I'm so lucky all the time. I have to stop myself from getting to the point where I feel guilty about how lucky I am. I mean, it's like I look at the background of I never thought I have a vibraphone upstairs and I have a bigger, better one downstairs in my basement studio. You know what I mean? I have a beautiful drum set. I have an electric vibraphone right there. I have a picture of my beautiful wife and children up here. You know what I mean? Like I'm looking at pieces of music that was gifted to me by a marimba player from the 50s, a female marimba player in the all girl marimba band. I have so much more of that I just look at and I'm like, man, how did I get so got lucky. This little quilt here is a bunch of shirts that I've acquired over the years, or that meant something to me. Seven Summers is Sean Martin, who one of the best piano players I've ever met. And I was lucky enough to tour with, and honestly one of my best friends. And he's no longer with us. Sarah Reich, you know what I mean? Like my Mallet Lab, the companies who sponsor me. I mean, so my whole life is just a constant reminder of how blessed I am, and so that's why that song. But I think about it so much that I almost start to feel bad about it. And so I can't do that. Like, right. Like my dad used to say the worst way to help anybody in a disadvantaged position is to become one of them. So I have to remember that, like, if, okay, I have this privilege, what am I going to do with it? I think that's kind of the undertone of that song.
Okay. We made a Spotify playlist called
I love that.
hashtag Walk Talk Listen, and you will find all the songs that have been selected by my guests, and
I don't
that
even know
is
you could hashtag a Spotify playlist.
um, and it's funny because you have from hard rock to jazz to uh, name it,
I love it.
classical. It's all there.
There are two versions of the song. There are two versions of the song. The
Mhm.
one that I listened to first that resonated with me was the one that's a Spotify session by Tish Hyman. So it's acoustic, it's just piano and her. There's another one that's from her album that's more produced. It has a rapper in the middle and stuff. That was great too, but it's not the one that um, I would say you put the other one on there.
We will add that song
Great.
as well. Yeah, time is running out. I still have a couple of questions. If
Sure.
we go for quick answers, that will be great.
I can't promise that, but go for it. I'll
so
try.
so um, you also are involved with Jazz Road. right?
That is my
Uh,
program. Yeah, I direct that program.
yeah. So I think it's about helping to shape um, touring opportunities for musicians, for jazz musicians.
Yeah, we have
Um,
2 programs. We're funded by the Doris Duke and Andrew Mellon Foundation, and we have quarterly cycles, and those are for Jazz Road tours. So an artist will present their tour for funding. So they have to present obviously their performance videos, work samples, and then they have to show their tour and their budget. And then if that tour gets funding, they can get it anywhere from 5,000 to 15,000. We give out about $140,000 every quarter to about, in $15,000 increments essentially. So about 11, depending on what they're asking for, about 11 to 15 artists every quarter. And then we also have another program which runs annually or biannually, depending on the year, which is creative residencies, which we give out up to $40,000 to artists to create projects that build the jazz field, their career, and community. So I oversee
yeah.
that along with my partner,
Okay.
Eric Wecker.
Yeah, I think that's great that you're doing that, and
Yeah, it's a
so,
lot of
so
fun, really
important.
rewarding. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's helping a lot of artists get their music out there and kind of get to the next level, which is really rewarding work. I'm also blessed to do that. Like I get to work and get paid and just still be in my industry and do. I mean, I can't. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Um. Yeah. I come from the NGO world where um, we have worked in many different countries. I've seen a lot of poverty, hunger, etc. I've seen and realized that we haven't made a world that's very sustainable. And so I've also contributed to discussions that ultimately led to 17 sustainable development goals that the world agreed upon. They're not perfect, far from, but they are goals like, goal number one is end poverty, goal number two is
We're,
end hunger, goal five is, ensure that women uh,
sure.
are
Yeah,
empowered, etc.
I'm familiar.
Um, so my question to all my guests is: have you heard about the Sustainable Development Goals, and if so, or if not, what would you like the listener to know about the Sustainable Development Goals?
I think what's interesting is that we see these things on like the United Nations scale, or we see these things on um, these large scope goals, and it kind of is like, all right, well, what can I do about that? I guess nothing. But what can anybody do about anything? And all you can do is what you can do. I think if you look at these, and I prioritized certain ones that are also within the possibility of me being able to positively affect it with my unique confluence of gifts, and
Hmm.
that's the ones that I lean into. And then I just be conscious of the other ones and try to do what you can in your little space um, to go ahead and contribute. So, for example, quality education. How can I contribute there? I think that's something that I can contribute to in my little mark of the world. And what kind of gaps can I fill? Because it doesn't mean that, all right, well, let's just dump money on it. I don't have the kind of money that could move the needle, but I do have the kind of skills that can move the needle if I look for the right opportunities. Could mean just like, all right, I just called a buddy who teaches a drum line in Atlanta, a youth drum line in Atlanta. I was like, hey, can I come volunteer? And these young men I have 3 daughters, so it's like I'd love to be in front of young boys and be able to help and to be able to help guide. Um, you know, I think I think things reduced inequalities. Again, how can we bridge the gap? I think some people might have a knack or an interest or what I like to call a geek point, like thing they really geek out about hunger or food. I have a friend back in Florida who's been doing sustainable gardens. He put one in Delray Beach to help feed that city that he grew up in and loves. And I think that that's amazing. So that city is now going to, and then that inspires other action, and it kind of moves its way out. So I guess my way of dealing with it, or I guess you'd say advice. I don't like giving advice, but I guess my advice would be to find the thing about that, that really speaks to you and that your skills can actually make a dent in, and then also have awareness of the other ones. And then in some small or large ways, you can help with that, right? You can help with that in the way that we recycle, or the way that you turn off lights, or the way that are reusing water, or finding little ways that you can go ahead and help um, make sure that you're speaking up for injustice where appropriate, and where you feel like you have the understanding and knowledge and expertise to be able to lend in there. But um, there's
Uh,
usually one or two of these things that
mhm.
everybody, if they looked at it, be like, oh, I can do something for that right now.
I think that's great advice, and just to remind the listeners, I mean, we're part of a concert of not only playing the album of Andromeda that's looking at climate, right, um, but
And what a
we're
great
also
thing she's doing,
also
right? What a
discussion.
great
Yeah,
thing she's doing. That's
yeah.
something that really speaks to her. To be frank, it doesn't speak to me as much because I grew up in what a virtual paradise of 15 minutes off the beach, right? And I didn't get affected by. But if I lived in Detroit or if I lived in like the heart of a city center, if I lived in New York City, I could be like, wow, I can't even breathe right. Why can't I? You know,
Mm.
but because I was right off an ocean, some of those things might not have hit me in my formative years. So it's not, I do understand it. I do see it. I do care about it. But it's not something that is like as if somebody was raised in the city or somebody had ancestors who were affected by that in a really meaningful way. My parents are from Jamaica. Fun fact: my mom is one of 14 kids. Only 3 of those kids came to America. Guess which 3 contracted cancer at one point in their life? And the other ones didn't, never. So actually, 1 went to London, 2 went to America, and all 3 of them contracted at some point in their life cancer. They're all healthy now. But so coming from Jamaica in the mountains, we don't. It's not something that's really thought about as much as in more urban centers. So it wasn't something that was really a part of my upbringing. My parents always had us in nature and always had us out and appreciating it. But the fact that all of that, I could say that I'm more concerned about seeing trees get chopped down. That bothers me. But so one way or the other, it's just that thing never really hit me. But Andromeda, look at how she found her way to music is her gift, and she's using that to be able to make real change around the circles and peoples that she meets. For me, I don't really think music is my gift. I think it is the means by which I'm allowed to ply my gift and ply my trade.
Uh,
Right? I've been able to affect a lot of students because of that instrument. I've been able to affect a lot of people positively. I think. I hope. Because of that instrument, it's helping me travel all over the world, and it shows my kids that I can play dad can play a weird instrument and make a living. Then we can do whatever we want. Um, so yeah, I think what she's doing is great. It's the perfect example, and I'm just glad that she keeps calling me to be a part of it. It's really really an honor.
and we are not reaching those 17 goals. On average, we are at 15 to 70%, unfortunately. So, a growing group of people have said that it's because those system and structure changes that we needed, they need to be keeping in mind that you need to work on it as an individual. We need to have the knowledge, the abilities, and as community as well. So then they developed inner development goals: being, thinking, relating, collaborating, acting. um, if you hear that, that, yeah, in order to have systems changing, so big changes, you need to be working on yourself, on skills like empathy, critical thinking. Yeah, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we come into a. I think it's going to be more important. It's more important than ever to question and to answer and to learn how to think. And I think that the evidence that I have seen coming out of higher education or education in general doesn't seem like they're really as quick on the take to see the kind of crisis we're in because it could be very appealing to not have a bunch of students in front of you that are thinking critically and just listen to what you say. And if you say something in a manner that is appealing to them or salacious, that they're going to be like, oh, that's interesting, I want to share that. um but I think asking the right questions, learning how to be empathetic, I think is everything. I think the proliferation of empathy is probably the most important thing that needs to happen. And unfortunately, some people just will never be that due to whatever sort of deficiency they may have, or whatever sort of differently abled. I'm going to call it a deficiency. If you're not empathetic, I could call it a deficiency. If it's not a deficiency for you personally, because it might not be, especially if you're in sales or finance, being slightly sociopathic might be the thing you need to be successful, which is fine. But for the collective, it's going to be extremely important as we move forward to have people who can put themselves in each other's shoes.
um so these conversations always go fast, Drew. So I have two last questions for you. Yeah, your question for the next guest.
I would say that every career and every process or every journey has a dip, right? Whether it's and different dips at every levels. Whether it is the 11-year-old who picks up an instrument and can't play it very well, but there's a gap between what they're hearing they want to play and what they can play, so they quit. Um, or the person who comes out of college with a music performance degree because there's not a well-worn path, like go get your master's, go get your doctorate, and you come out and everyone's going to offer you gigs, right? It's kind of like you're in the wilderness, and then you see your friend who just graduated. He's got himself the fancy bottle of wine in the one-bedroom apartment, and you know, you're thinking, man, where did I go wrong? While you're staying at home and practicing, trying to get the next gigs. So I guess the ultimate question would be, what dip was in your life where you either quit something or thought you preferably, actually, we'll keep it motivational. What dip was in your life that you could have quit, where most people in your industry or on your journey would have quit, but you didn't quit? And what was the thing that helped you not to quit?
Great question. Um,
I'm sure I'm going to come up
yeah.
with a better one right after we hang up.
Okay. My last question is before I thank you for this conversation. Is there any question that I should have asked you today that I did not ask you?
I actually was looking forward to the youth and spirituality questions. I think you might have, I think
We
you sort of
we we touched
grazed on it.
upon that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think
Um,
spirituality was such a big part of me growing up.
mm.
I think my religious upbringing was a big part. I had nothing but fun, and
And it still is, or not?
yeah, it is. But I mean, I was a pastor in my religion or we call it an elder, for better part of 10 years. No, probably
Oh.
at some level almost 15 years. So I had a lot of great friends. I met, but I hesitate now. I just kind of hesitate to attempt to be part of any community. I think that term community has really kind of um, come to mean something that I don't think it was ever really meant to mean. I don't know that it was on purpose, but I feel like the minute you say you're part of a community, that everyone expects you to hold the same beliefs, values, and opinions as everybody else in that community, even if there's no elected speaker for that community, right? So, I mean, I have my neighborhood community that I'm part of, but no one expects me to believe and think the same way as my neighborhood. But if I say I'm part of the Black community, or I'm part of the multiracial community, or part of the Jehovah's Witness community, part of the Christian community, everyone's like, oh, I have ideas on what you think. Or if I don't think that way, it's like, well, why aren't you thinking this way? What you can no longer be in this, you can be ousted. So I have thoughts and opinions that are formed because of my lived experience. And I remember when I'm multiracial. My grandfather I have white grandparents who are Eastern European. Um, and so for me, it's always been a challenge to not be Black enough to be Black in school and be white enough to be white. And I'm the whitest Black person people know. And if I'm dressing a certain way, and what are you? I'm being asked every day, and not really accepted, and kind of sort of having to move between the middle. Music was the only place where that never really mattered. It was just about what you can do. Um, but when you come around and everyone's posting a Black square for whatever reason, like, hey, Drew, where's your Black square? You got a big following. It's like, oh, now I'm Black enough for all these people, right? Because now I have a big following, where now people are listening to what I have to say. No, thank you. I will fight injustice in a way that makes sense to me and my family, and I'm not going to be pressured to do this because of a community or whatever and whatnot. So yes, I still believe in the tenets of my faith. I still practice. I am not as heavily involved. I have deviated in some best practices over the years. I've married someone who did not share my faith. She's an amazing woman who I love dearly, and we have wonderful conversations about it. We both exist in worship in a way that makes sense to us. Our children are not confused. We have good times, and all of our values still line up regardless. So, yeah, but yeah, I still believe in the God of the Hebrew and Christian Greek scriptures. So,
Okay. And one last question then, because of your wife is not, and I think you answered it already, or you mentioned it already, but it's not creating tension.
uh, it can, but I mean, so can the fact that she was raised in Philly and California and moved around a
Uh,
lot, and I was raised by two parents in the same house and lived in the same place for most of my upbringing. So
yeah.
it's just another conversation. But I didn't come by my faith emotionally. I came by it practically.
Hmm.
So I have no problem. And as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, you knock on doors your whole life. So you're the training of going door to door and being like, don't know who's behind this door. I'm about to bring up a topic that is universally controversial for most people. Really trains you how to hear other opinions and be objective about them, and to also be like, oh, I don't understand. You just mentioned something to me that I don't have the answer to. Let me go study and let me go see if I can figure this out. And that would grow my faith or, help me answer these questions. So I don't really argue it emotionally. It's kind of like, all right, well, when you're ready to actually talk and look at what evidence we have and look at what we look at and where this comes from and what philosophies there are that can also, and then see those types of things. And it's not that difficult to over to look over tension in that kind of aspect. Just like you talk about finances, probably get more tensions talking about finances than we do about religion and politics.
Yeah. Drew, thank you so much for today's conversation. I really enjoyed
Yeah,
it. I
thank you for
learned a
having me.
lot, and thank you for everything you do also, and for who you are. And anything the audience needs to know in terms of an album that's coming up or a concert that's a tour that's coming up. Want to
Yeah,
share?
well, the next thing that I'm doing, I just had a baby. So I have a 20-year-old daughter, I have a 12-year-old daughter, and I have a
Congrats.
8-month-old. They all live here at home, and I'm really trying to take advantage of that as much as possible to be around while they're all here, while I can still, be here and have an impact as that impact starts to wane. So I don't tour as much, but I do a few one-offs. I do out like I'll be with Jeezy, Young Jeezy, is an Atlanta rapper who's pretty well known. I'll be performing with him in Vegas at the end of October and then at the end of December. I'll be at Jazz Educator Network in January with South Arts Jazz Road. We'll be sponsoring that. Also, the Jazz Congress at Lincoln Center. I'll be up there for a day or two, and also at the beginning of January. Love New York in the beginning of January. If for those listeners, I
Is
just
that
rolled my
part
eyes,
of
but
the Jazz Winterfest in New York
yeah,
or?
it's at the same time. APAP,
Okay. Okay.
Association of Performing Arts Professionals, and Winter Jazz Fest, Jazz Congress, all happens in like that Wednesday, that Tuesday week. So, but I'll be going back and forth between there and New Orleans, and then something else, something else. No, I mean I'll be at yeah, we'll be traveling for work to try to visit some of these grantees to make sure that they're supported and that they're successful with their projects. And then I'm going to be home as much as I can with my family and hanging out with my kids
Right.
as
Right.
much as possible.
That's wise. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, and yeah, keep doing what you do.
Thank you, Maurice.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to Walk, Talk, Listen. Please check us out on 100mile.org or follow us on Facebook or Instagram.